back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
And if you are joining us live, welcome. This is totally experimental, totally new. We are doing this live at twitch.tv/helpless_skippy. If you have missed it, stick around. There might be more. But for right now, we're going to try something just a little bit different. Well, not right now. We're going to talk about Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc by ourselves for like 45 minutes, and then we're going to open up some Q&A from the audience. But for right now, we're talking Danganronpa, which this is a first experience for both of us, and it was wonderful.
It's a wonderful game. People have been telling me to play Danganronpa for years now, like pretty much ever since it first came out in the US, because I am well documented as being a huge Persona boy, and this
just
game,
weeb trash.
I mean, I am a degenerate, filthy weeb. Like, this is, again, well documented. But Danganronpa in particular, it feels like, if we're going with the Persona metaphor, like, Danganronpa is what Persona would see if it was tossed into the TV room. It's its dark, shadowy reflection that's more cynical, but shares a lot of common aesthetic elements. There's a lot of focus on friendship building, and it's a whole like murder mystery thing, which it shares in common with Persona 4.
I mean, half of it is literally a high school simulator.
Yeah. It's only, instead of doing JRPG battles, you're doing crime scenes and murders and mysteries. And honestly, that's a strict improvement, I think.
Oh my god, yeah, like if you could remove JRPG battles from most games, I would be happier. But I'm also on the record as not a fan of JRPGs.
I mean, like, I love Persona, but getting through the grindy dungeons, it's what you have to tolerate to get to the meaty weeb high school core in this meatball. I have no editor. I have no editor to protect me now. I'm live.
You have to wallow in your statements. No, like, this is basically, it is Persona, but like, there is nothing to wade through. Every minute of it is wonderful. The trials bog down at small points, but like, it's, 30 seconds to a minute, and then you're right back on it, as opposed to, half an hour to an hour of driving through Hades or Tartarus or whatever it is in this generation of Persona.
There's never a moment where you feel like your time is being particularly wasted. Like, most of the actions in the game feel meaningful in one way or another, even if you're just kind of exploring the school and trying to interact with all the different objects in the downtime. And yeah, that's the nice thing about a visual novel or an adventure game like this over a full-fledged RPG, is that you get the best of both worlds. You get that nice story focus without having to deal with the tedious sort of grind. And really, like, if we're talking about gameplay quibbles, like, the worst that I could really say is that I love how flashy and, like, cool and aesthetic the class trials actually are, but some of the, particularly during the truth bullet section, where you have to, like, find the contradiction in someone's argument, like, what the game does and does not consider the logical chain of events is sometimes sort of screwy. And I really did hate that mechanic where, like, you would have to pick out an argument that someone else said and apply it to someone else's, because I would always get it wrong. I would always lose like 3 hearts in those parts, because I would like pick up the word and use the right word on the other word, but that other word I didn't use it in the right order. And then I was like, I got to do this all over again. So it can get a little convoluted sometimes, and you can get bogged down in the logic of it. But overall, like, all the different elements, once you get the hang of it, make for a really, really exciting feeling sort of, like, trial experience. Like, I definitely preferred that they tried it this way, that they included all these wacky mechanics, as opposed to just straightforward, like, present the evidence with text boxes. I mean, I haven't played like the Phoenix Wright games. I don't know how the trials go down in that, but they were done.
They're similar to this, actually.
That's kind of what I figured. I figured that they wouldn't let it be so dry as to just be, come forth with your evidence. Use your text box.
I will say, to your statement of like sometimes just the logic was incredibly convoluted. I think the VOD from this is removed. Like, there's a couple. I streamed Danganronpa over on the Twitch channel. So there's a couple of VODs still up there if you want to go see like the Refutey and whatnot. But the one video was probably 20 minutes of me arguing with my co-host Desi about whether this train of logic I was going on made sense. And like, I'm just like, look, this is an airtight way of solving this case. The game just isn't letting me do it. Why is the game not letting me do it? And it was incredibly frustrating. And so like, it takes the knowledge. If you get in these moments, you have to kind of power through them, for one, because the characters and the interactions and like the individual mysteries are so good. It's well worth fighting through some frustrating logic. But even beyond that, like I was so afraid of failing one of the trials that I would just get so caught up and frustrated, and I would just get worse and worse at it. Failing trials is really not that big of a deal in Danganronpa. Like, you lose some HP, you go back like 2 blocks, you just undo what you just did, and you're caught back up. So, like, if you haven't played the games yet, you absolutely should, especially if you're a fan of character development. If you're worried that the trials are going to bog down, look up a guide if you really need to. Like, there's no shame. Just, there's better parts to the game.
Yeah, and so, because I will say that one of the reasons that the logic can sometimes be frustrating is, like, paradoxically, because a lot of the game's mysteries are so fun and engaging, in that where, like, if you get into a moment where you feel like you're ahead of the game in one way or another, like, you kind of already have moved on from some logic that the characters in the game are still sort of like squabbling over. Like, it can be frustrating, but also like that just goes to show, I think,
character X a ghost?
A particularly infamous incident is when you have to spend the entire first part of the trial, and it is funny, but it is frustrating.
Oh, it's great.
The trials can be quite long, having to prove that a character that people previously thought was dead is not dead, and convincing the idiot character that they're not a ghost.
It's so good.
But no, so like, but overall, even when you get in those moments, I think it's just a testament to how engaging the individual mysteries are, that like when you're looking around for clues, like like any good mystery, you really do want to try and solve it before you step into the class trial room. And
like any good mystery, any suggestions that you might have is usually thrown out the window about halfway through, because they're like, but you forgot about this, and here's how we prove it. And also, here's like 3 things that like, they flashed on frame for 1 second, and if you'd paid enough attention, you would have caught it, and you would have solved the mystery way back when. But you were too busy scrolling through the text, so you missed it.
Yeah, so like, with the exception of the opening mystery, which also, to be fair to it, not only I think is it important to make the first mystery kind of easy while you're easing into the mechanics, but also that there's kind of a cultural barrier to that one that would have made it a little bit more difficult if we didn't speak and write in English. Yeah, so But the thing is that, like, there was only, aside from that first mystery, there was only one other one where where I had nailed it before I went into the class trial, and I had it completely accounted for. And I gotta tell you, even though, like, again, trying to bog down to the logic, sometimes that trial was a little bit irritating, like, feeling the fact that the game gives you the tools that you need to figure it out, and if you do figure it out, is incredibly satisfying.
Phoenix Wright is, as we said, a very similar game in style to this, in that it's more a visual novel about solving cases and whatnot. And I continuously hummed the success music from Phoenix Wright as I was playing this, because Phoenix Wright nails the music of when you get a successful, like when you start to get that chain of like, this happened here, and then this happened here, and then this is how this went down. Like, the music that goes behind it is just driving and wonderful, and like, I kind of missed it in this. But like, the feeling is the same. Like, when you start to understand what is happening in this case, and you're like 3 steps ahead of them, you're like, you're gonna say this now, but here's why that's wrong, and I'm gonna present this evidence, and this fucking tarp is why you are wrong. And then like you just keep going down the list, and it feels so good. And I realize that's like strange how much I'm stressing this, but like if you play the games and you start to like, it feels wonderful to be ahead of the game. You feel like you are outsmarting it, like you're 2 steps ahead, like you're just like, I know what you're doing here. And once again though, the game almost every time will be like, you know what, you got about 75% of it, but here's what you weren't expecting.
You know, it's interesting thinking about it, that mysteries and procedurals and murder mysteries aren't more popular in video games in general because there's such a good medium for them. It's so strange because, like, people buy and read mystery novels all the time, and people watch, like, all sorts of cop shows. It's just like a case of the week every week. But there aren't as many video games like this, and I have to wonder, why not? Because there's nothing more satisfying than, like, being the detective and trying to figure it out yourself. I don't know. I think that Danganronpa really scratches an itch that I didn't know that I had. And particularly because it's not just any old mystery, but the way that they use the death game setup, that you're trapped in this locked room, prisoner's dilemma sort of situation, creates...
Making friends with everyone.
Making friends and then feeling, like, betrayed and having the heartbreak of that. That's why I say it's Persona's twisted cousin, is because, like, there will be a plot twist in Persona where a character dies or betrays you, but it'll be, like, the big moment of the game. I mean, when we get into spoiler territory, I'm sure Sean can tell you about his experience a little bit more.
Oh, my. But so many friends.
But one of the things that I love so much about games like this and some of the better Telltale games, is when I, as a player, experience some sort of arc. Not the character that I'm controlling, not Makoto, but me, Jackson Keller, when I am, like, persuaded by a game, or I can feel my actions change and my interactions with the characters kind of take on a different tone. And for a lot of reasons that, again, are basically impossible to talk about without spoilers, this game did a very good job of that. So I think it's great. I think it's awesome. But I do have one big but, one giant asterisk.
I thought you were just going to say one giant ass after you mentioned that you had a big butt. Hey-o!
I mean,
These are the jokes, people.
My ass isn't that big. It's not that giant. But no, I have one giant asterisk to my recommendation, and it's that it's not even necessarily a fault of the game being poorly written, but more, if we're talking about mysteries, the flip side of the mystery is that if you present a conundrum, if you present a question, but the answer that you as the author come up with isn't as interesting or satisfying as the one that the player or the reader or the viewer, whatever medium came up with, it can make the ending not land perhaps as strongly as it could. And this is...
Bear in mind, though, that's totally subjective.
Yes, absolutely. So... Again, my only big asterisk is that I really love the game. I really highly recommend it. And I'm sure we're going to dive deep into spoiler territory later, but I was not terribly fond of the ending. It soured me a little bit, but then I just had to remember all the other wonderful things about my experience with Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc.
I will kind of counter and say that I like a lot of the ideas with the ending. In our pre-discussion, we kind of talked a little bit about why you weren't as big of a fan. And I think in hindsight, I kind of agree with some of your points, but I feel like for the most part, I still really liked it. I think the idea behind it is really interesting. This is incredibly vague and also not helpful to any sort of actual discussion in what we're currently talking about. But like, I just want to say, if you are, new to the podcast and we're in pre-spoiler discussion, everything like that, and you're like, do I want to play this? And Jackson says, I didn't like the ending. I just want to say, like, I did, And it is incredibly subjective as to whether you will or will not like the ending, just based on like what we were saying of like whether you feel like the ending that you have created in your mind will be better or worse than the ending that they give you, which I thought the ending that they gave me was better than I was expecting. So
yes, and I have a tendency to, I've noticed this about myself, I have a tendency to create endings that are perhaps edgier or more challenging in my head and the game, and it's not like the game has any intentions of being that edgy or dark or cynical, although apparently I've heard in the original pitch for the game it was a lot closer to the sort of thing that I was thinking. But yeah, so if the game has one thing to say and expresses its themes, and it does them fine, then I can't really knock the game for it. But just me as a player, I didn't enjoy the last chapter as much as I had enjoyed the previous, like, 5 or 6, I guess is another way to put that.
So there you have it. With that, though, do you have anything else you want to talk pre-spoiler? Or, like, because, I mean, we've been knocking on that door, just, like, begging to get let in. But
this game's pretty much impossible to talk about without any sort of spoilers, aside from just the basic premise, so I think we should just dive right into it.
Hey, Editor Sean here, just chiming in to let you know that next week we're going to be talking about Roma in honor of its Best Picture nomination at the Oscars. So come back for that next week. Other than that, though, let's get back to the show. All right, let's talk about spoilers in Danganronpa. And before we even really talk about anything else, I just kind of want to talk about like the first 3 deaths and how we ended up getting to the point where we decided that we're going to talk about Danganronpa on the podcast. Because my buddies who... Desi, who streamed the game with me, and Pat, aka DJ Thundercock. Oh, that name just got dropped in our podcast. How fucking wonderful. They both have been recommending I play this game for a while now, and Desi in particular was like, hey, this might be an interesting subject for beating a dead horse, just, with how it works, something like that. And when I boot it up, I'm like, yeah, I can see how it might be. Like, I understand enough of the premise. I'd be like, I'd be curious to see how it goes. And so, like, we get an early death of Sayaka, who is our first case. She's the idol. She dies. I'm like, oh, she got stabbed in the stomach, which I realize is going to sound very flippant about her death. But, like, it didn't do anything to me that made me really think, like, beating a dead horse, because we tend to get, like, a little bit more gruesome or thematic deaths. And then it was followed shortly after by Junko, who gets skewered by a bunch of spikes. A little bit darker, but still kind of one of those things I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm kind of seeing why. But when we get to Leon's death, and it's the first punishment, that was when I sat up. I'm like, nope. I texted Jackson as soon as the stream ended. I'm like, Jackson, don't look up anything about Danganronpa, but we're fucking recording this episode. There's no way around it. This has to happen. Because the executions, especially, like, the first one to me, I think is the best, just because it's so wild.
I was going to say, I was almost a little let down by the rest of the execution, just because that first one is so damn good.
It's so good. It's 1,000 blows, where Leon just gets strapped to a pole and then pummeled with baseballs until he's dead. And it is just horrifying to watch. And you see, like, I think part of it too is that you can see the classmates all behind the fence watching it the entire time, and it's just upsetting to watch happen. And like, Leon, at least in my playthrough, kind of endeared himself to me really quickly. Like, a lot of the characters are going to be based entirely on who you identify with. And so, like, for me, like, Leon, Mondo, some, like, a little bit more of, like, the punky people who are like, hey, yo, fuck this, and weren't afraid to swear. I'm like, all right, yeah, I like them. Let's go hang out with them. And so, like, that was really rough right off. And I'm like, oh, well, that fucking sucked. And so, yeah, I think Leon's death, like, just really sets the stage for a crazy fucking game.
And as for me, like, when I knew that this was not only something worth talking about on the podcast, but just that I knew that I was in for something special in particular, was pretty much right away when the conceit was revealed, because I didn't know that much about this game. I knew it had something to do with murder mysteries. I knew it had something to do with anime high schoolers, and I knew it had some evil bear, but I didn't know anything beyond that. And so when the premise was revealed that they are trapped in the school and only one of them can escape by making the perfect crime, basically killing someone and getting away with it. That's when immediately all my like role player sensibilities went off, because when I play a game, especially one that offers a lot of choice or customization, I'm not the guy who will go through and like explore every single option or try to optimize like what would be the best way to get all the characters at once. I'm the guy who tries to put himself in the situation and think about what I would actually do. And I love when a game get me invested like that. And I think the fact that I was...
And then immediately kills the characters that you get invested in.
So poor Sean had a bit of an experience. Why don't you tell us about yours first, actually?
So this is another one of those where if you've watched the stream, you know exactly how this went down. But the quick rundown on people who die, I'm just going to go down the list. I'm going to tell you how I interacted with them. Because the first person to die is Sayaka, who I had already gotten a little bit of an attachment to as someone who's a fan of the Phoenix Wright games. Because I immediately assumed that she was my Maya Fey character, the character that's here to help me out and kind of push me in the right direction. And then she died, and I'm like, oh, well, now I'm sad. Junko, I didn't necessarily have much of a feeling about. As I said, Leon, I'm like, oh, okay, well, Leon's great. And then he dies. Chihiro, I was kind of drawn to a little bit, but I hadn't really spent much time with them. So they were just kind of an entity that was upsetting when they died, because as Desi, I'm going to refer to Desi a lot because I played this with him and he very much influenced a lot of my thoughts on it, was just such a sweet cinnamon roll. And I really regret not spending more time with Chihiro because they turned out to be absolutely wonderful. Instead, I spent a bunch of time with Mondo, the biker gang, and he was the killer. And I was just like, God damn it! That's like everyone I touch dies. And then it just went on from there, because like then I started hanging out with Taka, and Taka dies in the next case. So then I hung out with Sakura, and she dies in the next case. It took until I started hanging out with Hina that they lived, and I'm like, thank God, someone made it through that I actually liked.
So, meanwhile, Sean was over here, like, he took the matter to heart. Like, he was choosing the characters that spoke to him. The character that probably spoke to me most was Byakuya, or as I like to call him, Baron Trump, the rich boy who's a complete sociopath who sees it as like a game. I think he's a great rival character, and I like how he gets some. He's kind of like Vegeta in that he turns nicer and more cooperative, but not really. Like, he's still a total ass.
I should say, he's a dickbag, but he is one of my favorite characters in the game. He's terrible, he's awful, but he is a great fucking character.
So I honestly, like, because I was like into the whole role-playing scenario so much, I was thinking about the situation a lot like him. And I'm like, okay, so we're in a prison scenario here. Who is the biggest, baddest bitch in the prison yard, and how can I cozy up to them? So I immediately saw Sakura, who is basically Piccolo, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to be your friend. If you betray me, there will be nothing I can do to stop it, but I don't want to be on your bad side. And then I'm like, okay, I got the brawn covered. Who else do I want to talk to? Well, Kyoko is clearly the one most in control of the situation. She seems like a likely candidate to betray me, but we'll keep my eye on her. We'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and cozy up to Kyoko, so I can have a battle of wits. And Baron Trump, he's a smart dude, but he's clearly a threat. Like, he's one of my main rivals in all this. And so
he's a dickbag.
And so I was thinking about it in these terms, and I also befriended Mondo right before he got killed, because
rest in peace. He's in a better place now.
We'll talk more about his death scene in a bit, because it's so...
Get it? He's in a better place now?
Did you actually fucking say butter? I thought you just said a better place. God damn it.
No, my friend.
Oh, God, you did it. You actually went and did it. So... Mondo, though, I was drawn to him because if we're talking about the characters that I didn't approach, and I went out of my way to not spend time with, actually, it was both the ones that Sean spent time with, both the ones that you did, because Sayaka, they set her up as very much like you said, sort of partner character, main girl. But what tipped me off, I was just generally very suspicious already, because I'm a suspicious, cold-hearted monster, apparently, as this game went on to prove.
Dale Gribble, if you will.
I have to share an uncomfortable amount of traits with Dale Gribble.
Listen, the amount of pocket sand I've had thrown in my face is exorbitant.
So, but what tipped me off with Sayaka is when she's kind of like talking about her feelings to you, and she says, like, I have this dream of being the biggest pop star, but it wasn't easy to get here. Like, I had to do some stuff I'm not proud of. And immediately I'm like, red flag. She'll betray me. Like, cold entertainment industry lady is gonna leave me in the dust. So I went out of my way when I was given the choice to not hang out with her. And Leon, the first killer, I thought about hanging out with him, but like looking at him again, I guess this was more of a gut feeling, but looking at him again, I was like, appearance-wise, you remind me a lot of Yosuke for Persona 4. And
oh god.
So I didn't hang out with him, but like other characters like Taka, a big deal was made about Taka being the ultimate moral authority. I liked his character, but I was just sitting there thinking in my head, I'm like, no one can be that good. He's gonna crack in this situation, and I can't be around to watch it happen.
Oh, my poor son. Oh, my poor boys. My poor boys.
So no, I too got suckered in by Mondo. He reminded me a lot. Speaking of Persona, he reminded me a lot of Kanji, who is my favorite character of all time. And I was like, all right, we'll hang out with Kanji. And plus,
he's one big JoJo reference.
He's one big JoJo reference, and he's probably the second toughest person here after Sakura. So if something happens with Sakura,
but he wasn't. He wasn't the second toughest. He was weak, and he wanted to be stronger.
So
and he couldn't.
Let's talk about that arc, because that was probably my favorite arc in the game.
It was so good. It was such a good arc.
Because that's the one where Chihiro gets killed. And again, if we're talking about me being cynical, like, I saw Chihiro, and again, I'm like, all right, you're such a sweet cinnamon roll, but this is only going to go one of two ways. Either it's too good to be true, and you're going to turn out to be evil, and it's all going to be a front, or you are that much of a sweet cinnamon roll, and you're going to get your head bashed in. And
look at that!
And lo and behold, so Chihiro gets killed, and I gotta say, like, finding Chihiro's body, like, finding the bodies in the game was, even though the blood was weirdly pink and censored, like, genuinely disturbing to me.
Oh, man. The tension. Before we dive into it, I have, like, the tension when, the Monokuma's like, ding ding, a body has been discovered. And then, like, you're taking stock, you're like, all right, Mondo's there, Sayaka's there, Kyoko's there, who's left? And, like, you're just panicking, trying to figure out who's dead, like, praying it's not one of your faves.
It's such a unique feeling, and it's something that, I mean, honestly, more story-based games should just have a mechanic of just hanging out with your pals, because it does so much to increase the emotional connection going on there. And
that's why Fire Emblem's a good game.
Yeah, it's why people like Fire Emblem, it's why people like Persona, it's why people like Mass Effect. More games should do it. And the thing is that, but you know that, like, your heart is, like, pounding, and even when you find the body, it's still not over, because you know now there's that feeling of betrayal, which is arguably even worse. Like, okay, who did I like who turned out to be bad? And lo and behold, in this case, poor Chihiro got killed by Mondo, such a weak boy, but full of human pathos and understanding. And I actually teared up a little bit and sympathized with him, even though he did the wrong thing. It was bad and was a murderer.
Mondo was so sad. Mondo was the one that got me too, actually. That whole arc is just really rough, because that's also when you reveal that Byakuya is just a dickbag.
Well, and so that's, if we're talking about my my sort of character arc that I had, as a player, like, this was a key point in that, because as I had mentioned that, like, I think this game revealed that I'm kind of a monster, and so like when Byakuya started talking about like, man, this is just the game. Like, I'm not even gonna pretend to be friends with you. Like, I'm just gonna be over here and I'm gonna win and do whatever it takes. And in my head, like what I was thinking wasn't, oh no, what a disgusting dickhead. It was, Byakuya, you're not gonna win with an attitude like that. You gotta ingratiate yourself to the people. You're making yourself too much of a target, man. You gotta cozy up to the biggest, baddest.
It's survivor rules here, all right. You gotta make fucking, what are they called? Shit, I can't think of a word. Clans, alliances.
There you go. Yeah, so like I was like starting out pretty much just as evil as Byakuya, like expecting everyone to betray me at any moment, and like really again like interacting with people more for my own interest. I'm glad that like all the characters in the game are really enjoyable. So like I cozied up to Sakura because she was Piccolo. But I'm like, yeah, you are just like a Shonen Jump hero in the middle of this like anime high school.
She's wonderful.
Game. It's incredible. She literally does like the Super Saiyan pose, and her eyes glow like blue, and it's badass as fuck. And I was genuinely very upset. Not only when she died, but when she was a traitor, when she was working for the mastermind. And so, I was in very much the same sort of cynical point of view as Byakuya. And so during that case, because he's the one that leads you to believe, or tries to lead you to believe that Toko, or her alternate personality, Genocide Jack, the serial killer, had done it. And
although he did know that Genocide Jack was here. Yeah.
Yes, he's the one who tells you that because of the files.
Yeah.
And so
because she reveals it to him the day before.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking during this whole process where he's doing it, I'm like, all right, you're trying to get me to believe it's Genocide Jack, but you say that no one could have known all this information except for you, and you're an asshole. So I got your number, Byakuya. You're not gonna win. I got you. So I was so focused on taking him down, and like was genuinely convinced like that it was him, that he did it. That when the trial took a turn and like all the details that I'd overlooked, and it was actually Mondo, this nice soft boy who wasn't nice or soft enough. When it turned out to be him, and Byakuya was just a gambit on his part to see who was a threat. It was honestly a real humbling moment for me as a player to see like not only this character who I did start to trust and get to know, like turn out to just be so filled with such human faults and understandable weakness to cause him to like hurt another person, but to see my dark reflection in Byakuya, who has desecrated and like strung up this poor person's body
in a horrifying way.
Just to make a point, just to see like who would be a threat to him. That's what I started to take stock. I'm like, damn, like I do see myself in this guy a little bit, and that's not a good thing.
It's time to take a step back here and focus on what's important.
Yeah, where did it all go wrong? And like that, and slowly.
How you doing, hero?
Yeah, yeah. And so like slowly.
You got that green stuff? You know what I'm talking about? You got a little hookup?
Yeah. Oh my god, it would have been hysterical if at the end of the game, when you find his locker full of all his old stuff, if it was just like 60 bags of weed.
Shit, man, I had dime bags here the whole time and nobody told me? Fuck.
But like that was probably my favorite case in the game, both for how the game caught me off guard when I thought I had it cornered, and also just like the emotional reaction of characters that were still alive, and also just Mondo's death scene. He fesses up to it so completely and approaches it with such dignity and admits like all of his faults and all of the ways that Chihiro was better than him. And it breaks your fucking heart. It made me tear up.
I'm actually a little emotional right now. Like not even a joke. Like I'm actually like remembering this and a little upset. It's so good. It really is.
It's such a fucking good scene. And yeah, and that's like, and so that's not the only moment. Like even later on when Sakura dies, like I was
gonna ask you about that. What did you think of Hina's decision?
Oh, You know what, that made me really respect and like her character a lot more. Like that it was such a like, because it had crossed my mind that, like, okay, if this is a locked room scenario, it's not inconceivable that Sakura would be, like, ashamed of what she had done and, like, take her own life. So, like, the thought...
Funnily enough, actually, before that case began, like, it was one of those things where I managed to be usually a little bit ahead of the game, but not in the way that the game intended, because was on record as asking, I wonder what would happen if someone committed suicide. And then the next case was Sakura.
I had thought about that earlier, too, just because, like, it seems like... It's a bit of a logical question, because it's such, like, a hopeless scenario.
And the answer is, Chihiro gets fucked again.
Oh, God. That poor AI. That Chihiro can't catch a goddamn break.
But no, I really liked Hina's decision there. Like, that was another thing I was talking to people who were less than impressed with it, because they're like, wow, she's a total dick. And I mean, you're not wrong in that statement, but like, I think it's a totally understandable character motivation. Like, I get why she did it.
It works really well with the themes, too, that, like, she would rather... that, like, that's kind of her breaking point. And I like that they kind of bring her back from it, that she can't handle living in this world of such, like, brutality and despair. And at first I had thought when it was looking like Hina, when they tried to make us think that Hina was the culprit, that Hina had killed her, because the less interesting thing to do would be Hina is the most betrayed by Sakura, by her friend turning out to be a spy, and she does it and tries to pin it on the other people who are more outwardly antagonistic. Like, that would have been the hack thing to do. But having her purposefully try to fuck up the trial just so, like, basically because she doesn't want to live anymore, and she doesn't think anyone else deserves to live for having been tainted by all this horrible shit. It was a really interesting development for her character, because at first she seems just kind of like all the characters are anime archetypes to one degree or another, but, like, she in particular stood out to me as just, like, I've seen a lot of characters like her who are kind of the chirpy, sporty girl who's, like, positive and upbeat. But that was a really nice turn that made a lot of sense, and even though, like... And that was another moment where I felt like I had felt my attitude towards the characters change as a player, because earlier in the game, if she had done that, I would have been, like, you know, completely cynical, completely, like, thinking about how to win and being like, well, you know, can't trust her anymore, like, gotta not, like, associate with Hina. But like, I like, just the sense of camaraderie that the characters sort of had, I fell into as well. Like, that, no, we can't let this incident let us fall apart. Like, she can still come back from this. Like, we gotta do our best to be better. I mean, that was a real strong, touching sentiment, and one that I felt very deeply. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that moment was fucking great.
Yeah, no, Sakura's whole case is great, and, like, as I said, I ended up really hanging out with Hina afterwards, which it ended up being the right decision, because someone finally didn't die on me. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Of course, I did also hang out with Hiro, and he didn't die, but I cared less about Hiro. I just hung out with Hiro because I thought he was funny.
I went out of my way to not hang out with Hiro, because every time he opened his mouth, I was like, dude, who let you into this school for, like, the elite best people? Like, what do you even do?
What do you even do? You're just a fucking occultist. Sorry, clairvoyant. He's not into the occult.
He's literally Jill Stein hawking his healing crystals at us.
Listen, it's like, what was it, 1 million yen for his reading? That's right, 20% of the time.
Yes. Oh God. Like,
that said, he was right about his last reading.
No, I someone pointed that out to me too. That's a good. You know what? Good for him.
You get a gold star for today.
Although I will say, it is kind of funny, because, like, of the characters who end up surviving the events of the game, Kyoko, Baron Trump, Jill Stein, Hina, and Toko / Genocide Jack. Like, there was a big... And yourself, of course. There was, you know, there's a big to-do about how we're kind of, like, our bonds are forever forged. And I remember it was a good sentiment, but it rang a little hollow to me because I'm like, okay, well, I maxed out Kyoko's social link, and I got pretty far with Hina, but, you know, the game sort of went into endgame mode before I could wrap that up. But, like, those are the only two characters that, like, in universe I would be comfortable calling friends. Like, like, Hero he wasn't a bad guy, but, like, I wouldn't want to hang out with that dude. He's fucking dumb. And
yeah, I guess circumstances kind of dictated I hang out with him, because I hung out with him at least once because Hina was sad, and I was just like, I'm not gonna go hang out with any of these other people.
I mean, I think it says a lot about me being a judgmental asshole that when Hina was sad and I had finished Sakura and Kyoko's social link, so my choices were to hang out with Baron Trump, Hero, and Genocide Jack. I hung out with Baron Trump the first hour and then Genocide Jack the second hour. And funnily enough, this is my favorite moment of the game, where I was tempted to save Scum but didn't because it was too perfect. Is that earlier in the game, like, one of the first presents I had gotten from the from like the slot machine, from the capsule machine, was
the Monokuma Gachapon.
Yeah, the Monokuma Gachapon. One of the first things that I gotten from that was a pair of shears, and so I was hanging out with Genocide Jack, and I didn't even see the first part of her story because I was like, oh yeah, I'll give her the scissors. She's a crazy bitch. She'll like that. and so I go down and give her the scissors, and she immediately flips out. She's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you think I would use some low tier bitch boy scissors like these? Like, you think I would, you know, sully my hands on these scissors? Get out of here. And so, like, I increased her opinion of me in her eyes, and then immediately decreased it because I gave her the wrong present. And that was the last interaction I ever had directly with Genocide Jack.
That is just like quintessential Genocide Jack. No lie.
It was perfect, so I ended up not reloading my save. But yeah, so, like, you know, Toko, I'm sympathetic to Toko's whole split personality ordeal, even if she is weird as fuck, even when she's not a serial killer. But like, you know, I'm certainly not gonna put myself at risk as a handsome young anime boy hanging out near Genocide Jack.
Get a little bit of Gray Fox hurt me more snake thing going on in there.
You could literally replace every single line of dialogue that Toko has with one of the Gray Fox battle cries of, like, I remember that punch, hurt me more, Snake, and it would fit pretty much perfectly. Just replace Snake with Master.
All right, do you want to talk about the ending here for a little bit? Just because I know this is where we differ in opinion a bit.
So, yeah, especially because, like, if we're talking about the character arc and, like, sort of what I imagine, because I want to talk about the pre-ending, which I also found immensely satisfying, is that, so one of the other reasons that I sort of gunned immediately for Kyoko was that, in addition to Sayaka, like, just from the way she was talking, the way she was acting, and the fact that she was so clearly, like, the ultimate detective, which the game weirdly tries to treat as a reveal, even though it's the most obvious thing. So
listen, she's not, though.
She's not. We don't know what she is because memories. But so, like, one of the reasons, like, I was making fun of Toko earlier, but I guess, like, I don't have much room to talk because I sort of I went to Kyoko kind of wanting the heartbreak, because she seemed like the sort of character who was cool, calm, collected, had it under control, which in my eyes meant
cool enough to kill a person. Yeah,
like, smart enough to know, like, smart enough like Byaku to understand that there's maybe a bit of, like, a, like, gotta look out for myself thing, but even smarter in that she knows that acting like an asshole isn't how you win. So, like, I was wary of her, but also, like, that's the part of her character that I sort of latched onto. And so, like, I didn't want it, like, every time there was a death, I was like, oh man, did Kyoko do it this time? Did she betray me? Like, every single time. So, like,
this time it was Kyoko.
No, so, like, every
30% of the time, every time.
I just wanted that heartbreak so bad. I wanted, like, not just for the emotional catharsis of this character, who I had, like, genuinely grown attached to. Like, I like her character a lot. She's cool, she's badass, she's smart. But just for having that final confrontation of, you know, you versus the ultimate detective and proving that she did it. And you get that confrontation basically in the
Oh yeah.
And it was exactly as satisfying as I wanted it to be. And what it comes down to, though, and I think this is where this was the most powerful moment of the game for me, even though, like, if you're thinking about it in meta terms and not in role-playing terms, it's a little obvious what you have to do to get the true ending. But I think it's the choice that, like, really sums up the thematic crux of the game, is when you have the trial seems to be at a dead end. It's down to either you or Kyoko based on the evidence that's been currently collected, and you have one key piece of evidence that would put all the blame on her and exonerate yourself. And the game gives you the choice. Like, do you show the evidence? Do you sell her out? The evidence that she specifically told you right before the trial. And, you know, that's where the whole... Again, if we're talking about the character arc, like, that's the whole trust versus distrust. You know, are you in it for yourself, or can we really work together and overcome things? Like, what is the best way of going about this kind of hopeless scenario? And so, like, part of me, like, just thinking about it from a what would I do in universe perspective, like, I wasn't sure. I sat at that screen for a long time. I was like, oh man, like, I want to believe in you, Kyoko. I want to believe in you. I want to trust you, but I don't know if I can. And so, like, that was the heartbreak that I was looking for. And eventually I decided, like, all right, like, you know, I gotta believe, you know, I can't be like Byakuya anymore. Even
Power of friendship.
Power of friendship. Here we go. Which, of course, like, out of universe, since this is an anime game, is exactly what they want from you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But like, again, like, that was the emotional climax for me. So, which makes the last chapter where you're going around. You know, you're alive, you know, you get more information on Kyoko's backstory, and you start to figure out the real mystery behind the school, and that's where the game started to lose me a bit, because while I had found the characters and the individual mysteries very engaging, I was always wary of the idea of there being this broader conspiracy and whether or not could actually deliver on being satisfying. Because my first thought was, when they showed you that room full of all the blood and, like, the chalk outlines of the bodies, and they kept talking about the tragedy that happened at the school, my first thought was, oh no, are we all dead? Was there some sort of school shooting, and is Monokuma the devil? Like, are we in purgatory right now? That would be a stupid ending. I don't want that to happen. Which, thankfully, is not what happened.
That would be Lost.
That would be Lost. And Lost is a good point of reference for exactly this kind of problem, in that the reason that mysteries
Spoilers for Lost, actually. Sorry if you've been waiting 10 years to watch the last episode of Lost.
Is there anyone left who gives a fuck about Lost anymore? But yeah, so I was worried it was a Lost scenario, which it was not. And so my other thought was basically what the game ended up being. But I took it a little further, but I've been dominating the conversation. So, Sean, why don't you tell us about the ending and your reaction to it?
So, I thought the ending, as I played it, we find out that our main villain is, in fact, Junko, and the person we assumed was Junko was, in fact, Mukuro Ikusaba, the 16th student lying dormant somewhere in the school. Beware of her, but was actually dead the whole time, so it was irrelevant. We find out that the actual Junko is behind it. And I will kind of defer to Jackson and say that I agree that maybe the reveal... Like, I had figured this out. Like, I saw this coming a mile away. Like, about an hour and a half before the game ended, I'm like, it's Junko. Like, that's how it works. I put all the pieces together. When I saw there were only 15 lights on, I'm like, there was a 16 student still alive. Who would it be? Who could still be alive? It has to be Junko. So, like, I didn't catch up that they switched places, but I'm like, Junko's the killer. I do think that it is worth noting that, like, as far as a character attachment, you don't really get one with Junko, because she's not really a character until the last, like, 30 minutes. I liked her character, though. I liked her kind of crazy, multiple switching back and forth type of thing going on. I thought that was cool. I liked hearing her different voices and everything. I was into it. I do kind of... I'm speaking for Jackson a little bit ahead of time just to kind of inform how I'm framing the ending. In that her monologuing at the end was kind of underwhelming, but I did like the reveal that the outside had fallen completely to despair. I thought that was kind of cool. Like, I liked the ideas behind it. It's not necessarily the most unique thing in the world, but like, I was into it. I'm like, all right, this is neat. I like that this is actually happening and isn't just a lie to us, because that was the expectation, was that it was just gonna be, oh no, it's a lie, you guys are in hell or whatever, like Jackson was saying.
Yeah.
So when it's like, no, it's actually despair, I'm like, oh, cool, I like that.
Yeah, no, so that's like... So this is why, I don't know if we just mentioned this in our pre-discussion or if I said it earlier, but I don't necessarily think that this reveal is bad or poorly written or anything like that. But I will say that emotionally I was a little bit underwhelmed. Mostly, I think the key difference in our takes is that I was not really a huge fan of Junko's character. It always, one of my, like, cardinal sins of mysteries, one of the things that always bothers me is when the villain turns out to be a character that you've never actually met, because I feel like that spoils some of the fun. So I was a little miffed that due to the whole Venom Junko switcheroo with the Mystery 16 Enum. But yeah, due to that whole switcheroo, like, not only was the fake Junko not much of a character, but that was our first time meeting Junko, period. Which is... as far as, like, mystery reveals go, like, I was kind of hoping the answer would be a little more complicated. Like, somehow, like, Hero was not an idiot and using his psychic powers to control the fucking Monokuma or something.
Oh, no, I'm disappointed too.
Well, because that I honestly considered it. I'm like, what if though? But mostly, as far as the scenario, like, I didn't love the endless monologuing from Junko at the end. I found myself, normally I'd, like, listen to the voice acting and kind of read along with the speech, but by the end I was just mashing the A button to be like, yep, got it, despair, everything's despair, this city just showed you they're full of people ready to believe in good. You got your Dark Knight monologue ready for me, Junko. I get it. And so, to be fair, I finished the game at like 4 o'clock in the morning, so I was tired. But, yeah. But mostly, when it came down to what I thought was going on in the school, and what I thought the photos and the tapes of the previous students were kind of showing us, is that I thought that the scenario was somewhat similar, that the outside world either had gone to shit, or, the whole issue of, like, the school shootings and this idea of there being a tragedy at a school got me thinking down this line of, like, society being just so cutthroat and degenerate. I was basically imagining, like, an MGS2 scenario, like this whole killing game was a selection for societal sanity. You take all the best and brightest minds in the world, in Japan, what have you.
You take the good, you take the bad, and there you have the facts of despair.
But you take all these characters together, and either just through, I thought it'd be kind of like some experiment of, like, forging, like, the ideal leader of the future who is, like, strong-willed and intelligent and, like, cunning enough to deal with the despair and the issue of, like, kind of I think that would play well with this issue of throwing away your humanity versus your trust in your friends. Or I thought, since they had focused so much on Makoto being this ordinary sort of guy, like, they really put a lot of emphasis on that, your protagonist boy only got in because of a lottery, not necessarily because he's special. I thought maybe the idea would be literally MGS2, to have some sort of scenario orchestrated by headmasters and maybe some of the
Patriots.
Yeah, like basically you're going to take someone who's ordinary, and by having him outdo all these people who are extraordinary, you're going to make someone fit for this brutal society, be that post-apocalyptic or otherwise. And so that's what I was sort of imagining, and I thought that idea would play very well and give the villain very much a reason to like want to perform this sort of experiment besides being just a sadist. And I think that in my brain, in my head, while I was concocting this mad scheme, and I know that like I'm basically rewriting the game at this point, which is partly on me, but I also think that's just one of the dangers of the mystery genre, is that they do kind of invite you to try and put the pieces together. And so if you come up with a conclusion that, to me, in my head, was more satisfying than the one that I got, that it was basically Junko just trying to prove a point, it was similar enough to what I had imagined, but not quite, without that little extra wrinkle to it, where I was just sort of like, oh, okay.
We've been at this for about 55 minutes. Do you have anything you want to say in conclusion, or do you want to kind of open it up for some questions?
Let's open it up for questions. I'm curious to see what our lovely listeners here have to say.
Yeah, so like fire away. Let us know why we're wrong and tell us other things.
I see Desi. I don't know what this is a response to because I wasn't watching the chat. I'm assuming he's talking about my interpretation of the ending when he says that is almost as dumb as Steve's idea in V3, and I have not played V3, and so I'm not sure what that means. But I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that even if it wasn't more specifically that idea that I had concocted, like I wasn't married to that, obviously, it was more just I was kind of hoping there was more to the ending, more to the villain, more to Junko's character than just proving a point, basically. Which, I mean, I don't know. I like having that extra wrinkle to it. So, yeah, that's...
Thoughts on Hifumi is Desi's next question. Which to me, the best way to put it is I took notes today to kind of prepare for the podcast, and I listed everybody's ultimate ability, and I have Hifumi listed as the ultimate fuckface. So I feel like that should really summarize my thoughts on Hifumi quite nicely.
Hifumi. Oh man, I'll admit to being entertained by his character on occasion. Like Hero, I had the same thought of like, who let you in here? Like, who decided what the world needed was like the ultimate otaku? And so, like, a lot of his antics were just standard like anime pervert bullshit that's tiresome. But I will say that there was one moment, actually early on, that I think kind of endeared me to him and made me cut him some slack, which was when he gets in an argument with Toko, and Toko's being all like stuck-up literary girl, and she's like, oh man, anime and manga, they're all just trash, like only real literature is gonna stand the test of time. And Hifumi like talks about comics and stuff like touching people all over the world, and I'm like, yeah, you go, Hifumi, you tell her. Yeah, his character, Hifumi, surprisingly did not annoy me as much as I expected him to. But being the cynical monster that I was, in the chat, Desi also said that Jackson wanted the despair. So being the despair guy here, I absolutely was never going to associate with Hifumi because he was dead meat walking. And also just thanks for clarifying, Desi. In the chat when he said that his thing that's almost as dumb as Steve's idea in V3, that was in reference to Hero's psychic powers being the main villain. Which I agree, that would have been stupid, but also hilarious.
But great. Yeah, it would have been wonderful. Favorite Junko? I want to say I really liked punk rock Junko. But like I feel like that falls entirely in line with what I was saying about Mondo and Leon earlier.
See, I this is actually a very revealing question, because you went for the characters who were very punk rock, like, in your face. My favorite Junko is actually Secretary Junko, very cold Junko. So, like, and I gravitated towards Kyoko and Sakura, who were also kind of cold and stoic and distant. So that's actually kind of an interesting, it reveals kind of an interesting thing.
It does, yeah. That's a curious statement now, isn't it?
Yeah. I not apropos of a question, but one other thing I wanted to say is that I was there was only one occasion in the game where I had completely figured it out before I went into the class trial, and that was when Celeste killed Hifumi and that whole double up conspiracy. And I gotta say that even though Celeste was acting very suspiciously, it was such a convoluted setup that I was very pleased. I felt like a smart boy when I was like, yeah, like, you tricked that fucking otaku boy into doing your bidding and then you killed him. Yeah.
But also you killed Taka.
Also you killed Taka. And
I can't forgive you for that.
And I will say that, like, there's a lot of good, I think the game has a good balance of during the post-trial discussions when Mondo kind of gives us his heartfelt backstory and, you know, Hina's kind of gazing into the void of despair at the loss of her friend. Like, we get a lot of genuinely emotional moments, but I found myself after Mondo being a little bit worried that at the end of every trial we'd get some sob story from the murderer. So I will say they broke it up very well by having them ask what Celeste's motivation was. And I'm like, oh, here it comes. Like, she gambles because she grew up in poverty and now she wants to rise to the top, and oh, isn't that so tragic? But then she just said that she wanted to escape so she could live in a castle full of boy toys. And I was like, yeah, all right. Like, yeah, you go, girl, go do it. Except no, we caught you red-handed, so get burnt.
Important correction, by the way, really quick. It's actually Penelope, not Celeste.
I heard about this confusion.
Yes.
How long were you calling her Penelope?
Oh, had I not had Desi in chat with me, I probably would have called it that for like a game and a half, or like a session and a half.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Not knowing who is in the next couple of games, what kind of ultimates would you be interested to see?
That's a good question. That's a great question. I would say here, actually, Sean, I'm going to open up your list, your ultimate fuckface list, so I can remind myself of who was in this one.
Please do.
So the ultimate programmer. I would like to see. God, maybe I don't have nearly as much imagination as I thought I do. That's kind of tricky. Sean, do you have any thoughts to get the brain juices flowing?
I mean, I'm just kind of going off like things that I see around me. Like there's ultimate musician that we haven't seen. There's like ultimate gamer. I feel like could be a thing. I know that's silly, but like, admittedly, I could see it.
Yeah, no, that could work. Ultimate. I don't know the word for this, but ultimate like naturalist, like a nature boy, like someone who's like a
botanist.
Like a botanist or someone who just knows a lot about like survival in the wilderness, like that sort of thing.
I got a fun question for you, just from myself. Is like they allude to the ultimate despair happening outside, and like they don't never really dive into what it is, and from my understanding, like they never really do in any of the games, which I like that a lot. Actually, I don't really want to know what it is, because I feel like the ultimate despair is to look under yourself and see what would make you the most miserable. The ultimate botanist died in the tragedy. He made the big ass flower.
Oh right. Shit.
But yeah, so my question is then, what do you think the ultimate despair is? Like, what do you assume triggered off the rise of Monokuma?
So, I mean, it's got to. That's kind of interesting, because I wonder how much this has to do with like cultural differences, because I think that we can at least it's heavily implied that a lot of it started at the school, and since they are the ultimate hope, that I want to say that just like the shock of so many like bright and young promising people getting killed really brutally like brought down everyone. But then again, the game was made in Japan in 2010. We here in America have more traumatizing things happening to us over breakfast. So
dark.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that I don't think it's like a nuclear war necessarily, or it didn't start with a nuclear war. My guess is whatever it is, it was something more social.
So here's my big theory, and this is probably something just because I adore the show Preacher, and it's something that kind of looms in the back of my head. But like my thought is one of two things. One, we saw the face of God and they didn't care. Or two, we found proof that there is no God. And like, ooh, I feel like that would have just like far-reaching implications within like society. I feel like if that would be the thing that would just drive people off the fucking wall. Like nothing matters anymore. Full nihilism.
That would fit well with the whole hope versus despair. That if we don't have the ultimate hope of like an afterlife or some sort of divine purpose, then people completely losing their minds. Yeah, that would fit well with that.
Yeah, no, I was like that feels like the type of thing that would send the world into chaos. Like there's not a whole lot of things that I feel like would do it in this way, and I feel like that's one of those things that just be like, yeah, the world's a fucking nightmare now. Enjoy.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. And I guess as far as like the because we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-discussion, and since we have a minute while we're waiting for more questions to come in, I do like that. I like the idea of the tragedy and the ultimate despair being something that's a little bit ambiguous. I'm not sure I was super fond of the execution. I think that the game was maybe a little too tongue-in-cheek about it. Like there were a couple of moments where the game basically turned directly toward the camera and said, "This doesn't matter." Which, we've been on record on this show as being...
I really like when they looked at the camera and said, "It doesn't matter why you don't have your memory."
I guess so. I'm down with the sentiment, but like I feel like it
too
takes...
self-aware.
Yeah, I'm not. And self-awareness for me, just like subjectively speaking, it's a fine line. I don't know. But like I definitely can get annoyed with something when I feel like it's being a little too self-aware. And I think those moments cross the line for me a bit.
Ooh, all right. Here's a solid. We'll call this the last question because we got to wrap things up a little bit here. And I feel like this is a really good question to end on.
Wait! Before we end on this good question, I have nobody asked it, so I have a very important question for you, Sean.
Oh God, yeah.
Who is your waifu? Give me the names. Give me the anime waifu, Sean.
Oh, okay. I'll do my top 3. Because I think the answer is going to be Mondo Chihiro Hina.
All right. Cool. Respectable answers. I'm gonna go down this list of all the characters. I'm gonna give them a tier. Okay. So ignoring Makoto because he's basic bitch POV character.
Yes.
Hina. Pre Sakura trial, Hina would have been B tier for me. I liked her enough, but after, I think she's a solid A tier. I really like that wrinkle to her character. Byakuya, a solid A tier husbando, a complete rat bastard, but highly enjoyable and a great rival character. Celeste, Penelope, I'll give Penelope the A tier, if only for the
I believe you're looking for P tier.
The special P tier for Penelope. But like I said, I really do appreciate how she was just straight up. She had no sob story or grand ambitions. Well, she had grand ambitions. I just want to live in a castle. And I'm like, you know what? I can get behind that. Chihiro, solid B tier on Chihiro. They're a sweet cinnamon roll. Maybe a little too sweet for my tastes, but I like Chihiro. Hifumi, we got that D tier for Hifumi, and
hell yeah,
it would be bottom tier if it weren't for him standing up for the artistic merit of manga. Okay, so Junko. I didn't really like Junko's character, but I'll give her the C tier just because I do like the gimmick of her like shifting the personas. Taka solid B tier. Not much to say about him. He was a good character.
But what about Kyondo?
Kyondo, on the other hand, Kyondo is probably a nice A tier. That bumps him up for the ridiculousness of the situation. Kyoko. Kyoko's one of my S tier characters. I really like her style. I really like what a cool customer she is. And I mean, what can I say? I like the badass smart people. Leon did not leave that much of an impression on me. Probably just like a C tier. I didn't think he was particularly bad.
I'm rating B tier anyway.
Fair enough. Mondo is definitely an S tier. His whole arc was really great. I liked his personality. He was basically Kanji from Persona 4's Dark Reflection, like what Kanji would be if he kept going down the wrong road. And I really like that. Sakura, another S tier. She's Lady Piccolo, and it's amazing. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. Sayaka, again, Sayaka probably C tier. She would be lower because at first it's like, she seems kind of basic, but that little twist of her being kind of ruthless, I like that. I liked how that ended up playing out. Toko. I mean, I technically am rating waifus and not characters right now. So as a character, Toko is great, but I have a distinction to make here. Toko is like a disgusting trash person who I love, but a disgusting trash person nonetheless. So if we're doing waifu tiering, Toko's gotta be like D tier. But there's also Genocide Jack to consider, and Genocide Jack that's a solid A tier waifu right there. Her complete murdering rage of madness is excellent. And then Hero's a D tier for sure. What a dumb piece of shit. And then Venom Junko is bottom tier for being a non-entity.
Mukuro Ikusawa, the mysterious 16th student lying dormant somewhere within the school.
The mysterious 16th student. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say before we get into the good final question,
yeah,
we've got one more quick but good question, which is: do you think the game is more of a video game or a visual novel?
That's kind of hard for me to answer because I haven't played a ton of like real VNs. I've played a lot of shitty Renpai VNs. But I think it would be fair to call this a game, more of a game, just because, like, mechanically with the investigations, like that's very point and click adventure to me. So that's kind of how I categorize it in my brain, though I'm not sure how much of that is just my ignorance of what your average visual novel looks like.
No, I'll bite that. I'll mirror Jackson with that one and say, yeah, it's a visual novel, or not visual novel, video game. Okay. Yeah, so last question, and I like this question a lot. What would you be the ultimate of, and what would your execution be like?
Now this requires some deep introspection. What would I be?
This might actually be a fun question to come back on. Like, if we want to kind of marinate on it, because we will absolutely be doing Danganronpa 2.
You know, that's a good idea. I kind of like that because we really like the game. According to our friends Desi and TJ Thundercock, the next two are even better. So I definitely think we should do this again, and I think that is the sort of question that deserves a more thorough answer. But right now, the ultimate. I mean, is there really any other answer for me than the ultimate Metal Gear fanboy? And my execution is to be beat down by Monokuma wearing Liquid Snake's trench coat and then tossed off of an Arsenal gear.
All right, that tracks pretty fucking well.
Now that's my fun meme answer. I'll try and think about like a too real answer for next time.
Yeah, I don't even have a fun meme answer prepared for this one. I was not prepared for this one. Fuck. So yeah, we'll wrap it up here. We'll talk about some things we have in the works still. So stick around till we clear, please. If you are new, I am Sean McKinda. You can find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. You're also already on my Twitch channel, so hey, look at that. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on there, you can hit the follow button. There's also Discord links down below. If you are not part of the Discord, or if you're not part of the Twitch channel right now, you can do that over at twitch.tv/helpus_Skippy. All the links are there as well. Also, isortof.com if you want to just keep up with some of my other side projects.
And I am Jackson Keller. You can find me basically nowhere right now. You
can find him on twitch.tv/helpus_Skippy from time to time.
That's what I was about to say. I make appearances here every now and then. Do we want to tell them what we got cooking up? While we have their attention, because that's probably the most consistent place people will be seeing me in the near future.
Yeah. So this did go really well. We weren't really sure how we were feeling this was going to go. And we really like doing this. I thought it was a lot of fun. I like having questions that we can ask and answer. So we're going to try and make this a monthly thing. We're going to come back once a month to talk about a video game over on the Twitch channel with a live Q&A session at the end of it. So keeping that in mind, next month we're going to be talking about Nier Automata. The month after that will be Dangan 2. So we are going to do Dangan 2, but we've been planning to do Nier Automata next month anyway, so that's slotted in there. Stick around for that. I'm excited to talk about it. The music alone makes me so excited. I'm jazzed.
I've been meaning to play Nier for forever, but when it came out, my PS4 was busted, and I was very sad about it. So this is it. This is my chance for redemption.
It's going to be great. That said, as always, if you want to keep up to date with what the podcast is going on with, you can do that over on Twitter at BADH_cast. It's also a great way to get in touch with Jackson, because I will tell him what is you say to him. Other than that, though, as always, thanks to Loads of High with the use of our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. Also, shoutouts to 25yearslatersite.com for hosting this. We talk all the time about them. They're really wonderful people. They got a bunch of really great content. Please go check them out. Go give them your clicks. Read their articles. They're great people. Next week, we haven't talked about what we're doing.
I was just about to say, do we even know what we're doing next week?
No, so I guess that's going to be a mystery. Listen to the podcast. We'll reveal it there, because I'll edit it in.
No, you got to keep it. We got to make form follow function. We got to leave small clues. You got to insert small hints at what the next podcast will be.
If you dig into the podcast itself, you'll actually be able to hear subtle beeps, which if you put those in the correct order, they're Morse code, revealing that, in fact, next week we will be talking about Good Burger. Ooh, did you catch our deception? Because if you've been paying close attention, you will have decoded the Morse code to reveal that we are actually talking about Roma next week. So please come back for that. For now, though, anything you want to say in closing, Jackson?
you know what? This has been a real great time. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks for all the questions and listening in and being a great audience, being a great captive audience.
It was great. Thank you all so much. We will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go.